It is 4:33 a.m. The Strait of Hormuz is 21 nautical miles wide at its narrowest point, and every one of those miles is accounted for tonight. The water here does not behave like open ocean. It is compressed, channeled between the Iranian coast to the north and the Omani headland of Ras al-Had to the south, into a corridor that the global economy has been threading for decades without fully appreciating what it means that someone controls the geometry of its approaches. 21 miles. Roughly the width of the English Channel at Dover. Roughly the distance a man can drive in 20 minutes on an empty road. At sea, at night, in the 14th day of a war that has rewritten every assumption about escalation thresholds in the Middle East, 21 miles is a number that contains multitudes. The USS Abraham Lincoln carrier. Strike Group has been ordered to transit the Strait of Hormuz from the Arabian Sea into the Persian Gulf. The order came from 5th Fleet at 1:14 a.m. It is a mission with operational logic that needs no elaboration. The Persian Gulf contains American bases, American assets, American personnel, and a tanker corridor that the global oil market has been watching with the focused anxiety of someone watching a surgeon operate without anesthetic. The carrier's air wing in the Persian Gulf changes the geometry of Operation Epic Fury in ways that planners have been modeling for 11 days. The transit is necessary. The transit is also, by any tactical assessment conducted by anyone with knowledge of Iranian naval disposition over the past 72 hours, the most dangerous single movement the strike group has been asked to make since the campaign began. The Combat Information Center of the Abraham Lincoln smells of cold air and electronics and the accumulated tension of a watch that has been running without relief since midnight. The overhead lights are set to red for night vision preservation. In red light, faces look different. The angles are harder. The shadows deeper. The tactical action officer has mapped the electronic picture around the strait 17 times in the past 3 hours. She knows every surface contact. She knows every emission source. She knows the pattern. And at 4:33 a.m., the pattern has changed. At 4:35 a.m., the SPY-1D picks up new surface contacts, not fast attack craft, not patrol boats. The radar returns are large, consistent with frigate-class hulls, and they are emerging from anchorage positions near Bandar Abbas, the principal Iranian naval base 26 nautical miles north of the strait's centerline. 3 contacts initially, then a 4th. Then, at 4:37 a.m., a 5th and 6th contact appear further west, separating from the coast near Qeshm Island, with a deliberateness that the TAO will later describe in her log as coordinated and pre-planned. 6 Iranian frigates, the Moudge-class and Alvand-class hulls that intelligence assets have been tracking at Bandar Abbas for the past week, warships that survived the opening strikes of Operation Epic Fury, because they were assessed as secondary priority targets, and because the regime, in its strategic calculus, had apparently been saving them for exactly this moment. The strike group's advanced destroyer, positioned 12 nautical miles ahead of the carrier, paints the same picture and reports it to the Lincoln CIC at 4:37:22 a.m. The watchstander's voice is level. The information is not. 6 frigates moving to intercept the transit corridor. Their projected courses, computed by the fire control system from bearing rate and speed, converge at the strait's navigational chokepoint in approximately 44 minutes. The chokepoint, the passage between the traffic separation scheme inbound lane and the Iranian-claimed territorial water boundary, is the narrowest viable deep draft passage for a Nimitz-class carrier. The frigates are not moving to attack. They are moving to occupy, to fill the geometry, to place steel where the carrier must pass and force a choice, stop, deviate into shoal water, or attempt a passage through a formation of warships whose rules of engagement, in the 14th day of a declared military campaign, are not constrained by peacetime protocols. This is not a swarm. This is not a missile launch. This is the oldest form of maritime warfare, the physical blockade. The use of hulls as language, distance as a message that the sender calculates the receiver cannot ignore. The commanding officer of the Abraham Lincoln is on the bridge at 4:38 a.m. He has reviewed the tactical picture. He has received a communication from Fifth Fleet that arrived in 4 sentences and required no interpretation. The transit continues. The course does not change. The strike group will pass through the Strait of Hormuz on schedule, at speed, on the planned track. Any Iranian vessel that places itself in the navigational path of the strike group will be treated as an immediate threat to safe navigation in international waters. The CO reads it once. He sets it down. He does not respond with words. He responds by maintaining course. At 4:41 a.m., the destroyer head of the strike group transmits warnings on Channel 16. The transmission identifies the strike group's composition, its intended transit lane under the international regulations for preventing collisions at sea, and the legal framework, Article 38 of the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, that guarantees the right of transit passage through international straits to all vessels, including warships. The transmission goes out in English and in Farsi. It is made with the calm precision of a legal argument delivered by someone who knows they are right and knows that being right is not the same as being safe. The frigates do not respond. Their speed increases to 18 knots. The geometry updates. The chokepoint arrival time compresses to 38 minutes. The MH-60R Seahawk that has been orbiting at 2,000 feet ahead of the strike group drops to 1,200 feet and activates its forward-looking infrared camera. The picture on the cockpit display shows 6 warships moving in a loose double column, 3 to the northeast, 3 to the southwest, their wakes bright white against the dark water, their hulls generating the thermal signature of propulsion plants running hard. The lead pilot calls the formation to the CIC. He has been flying for 3 hours and 40 minutes. His voice carries the specific flatness of a professional who has decided that the frequency of his speech will not be determined by the magnitude of what he is looking at. At 4:44 a.m., the Iranian frigate formation conducts a maneuver. The 3 northeastern ships accelerate and begin a wide arc that will place them ahead of and to the north of the strike group's transit track. The 3 southwestern ships maintain course toward the chokepoint. The maneuver is designed to create a pincer, to put Iranian hulls on both the northern and southern aspects of the carrier's transit lane simultaneously, forcing the carrier to either halt or navigate through a corridor of armed warships whose intentions are declared by their positioning rather than by anything they have transmitted on the radio. The silence on Channel 16 is its own message. The Iranians are not transmitting because transmitting would constitute a negotiation, and a negotiation implies that the outcome is uncertain. They want the outcome to appear certain. They want the geometry to speak for them, to say, the corridor is closed. Turn back. The TAO watches the maneuver complete at 4:47 a.m. She runs the new geometry. The northeastern element will reach its blocking position in 26 minutes. The southwestern element will reach the choke point in 29. The strike group, at current speed, will reach the choke point in 31 minutes. The margins are measured in minutes. At sea, in a strait, with 6 frigates closing from 2 axes, minutes are not abstract. They are the specific distance between a situation that can be resolved without contact and one that cannot. At 4:49 a.m., the destroyer ahead of the strike group increases speed to 26 knots. It moves ahead of the carrier by 3 additional miles, positioning itself between the northeastern frigate element and the carrier's intended track. The move is deliberate and visible on every radar screen in the strait. It says, "Before you reach the carrier, you pass through us." The mathematics of that statement do not require elaboration. The destroyer is smaller than a frigate. It is also an Arleigh Burke, and every naval officer in the Iranian formation has spent a career learning what that means. At 4:51 a.m., the Seahawk repositions to cover the southwestern frigate element. The lead pilot drops to 800 feet and activates the laser designator. The targeting laser paints the lead southwestern frigate, not firing, not attacking, but marking, illuminating, making visible to every electro-optical sensor in the formation the fact that the Seahawk knows exactly where they are and that the laser is the least of the weapons being pointed at them from assets they can and cannot see. The frigate's bridge crew can see the laser dot. It is small and green and perfectly still on their forward deck plating. It does not move with the sea. It does not waver. It moves only when the frigate moves, tracking with mechanical patience, because the system producing it is not tired and is not uncertain and will not blink. At 4:53 a.m., the southwestern frigate formation begins an emissions change. The AN/SLQ-32 electronic warfare system aboard the destroyer detects a fire control radar activation from the lead southwestern hull. Not a weapons lock, not yet, but an active illumination consistent with a crew running through the pre-engagement sequence on their anti-ship missile batteries. The EW operators report it to the TAO in a voice that is precise and does not add adjectives because the adjectives are unnecessary. The TAO reports it to the CO. The CO orders the CIWS systems to active tracking across the strike group. Every failing system on every ship in the formation elevates, acquires the southwestern frigate formation in its thermal tracking queue, and holds. The sound this produces, a series of mechanical movements that travel through the ship's hull and up through the deck plates, is felt rather than heard. The watchstanders on the bridge feel it in their feet. It is the ship's body language, and it is not ambiguous. At 4:55 a.m., the Seahawk over the southwestern element reports a new development. One of the three frigates, the third hull in the formation, trailing approximately 800 meters behind the lead, has altered course. Not back toward Bandar Abbas, across the traffic separation lane. It is moving perpendicular to the strike group's track, positioning itself directly in the center of the deep draft passage. At the speed it is moving, it will reach that position in 11 minutes. When it does, it will be a 1,400-ton warship sitting broadside in the only water deep enough for the carrier to pass through without grounding. This is the desperation move. Not missiles, not torpedoes. Steel. The oldest weapon in the naval arsenal, the willingness to put your hull where the other ship needs to go and hold it there. The CO is informed at 4:56 a.m. He stands at the bridge windows for 4 seconds without speaking. Then he gives an order. The second destroyer in the strike group, the ship positioned to the carrier's starboard quarter, increases to flank speed and moves to intercept. It is going to reach the choke point before the Iranian frigate does. The geometry is tight. The calculations are running in real time on the fire control display in the CIC. The margin is 3 minutes and 40 seconds. At current speeds, the destroyer arrives first. If the Iranian frigate accelerates beyond 22 knots, the margin inverts. The Iranian frigate accelerates 21 knots, 23. The margin shrinks to 2 minutes, then to 90 seconds. The SPY-1D on the lead destroyer is tracking the maneuvering frigate with a precision that produces updated intercept solutions every 6 seconds. In the CIC of the Lincoln, the TAO is watching two ships converging on a single point of water and running the arithmetic with the cold clarity that her training has made instinctual. 2 ships, 1 passage. The margin is now 60 seconds. At 4:58 a.m., the Seahawk activates its AN/ALQ-210 electronic support suite and begins transmitting on the Iranian frigate's known communications frequencies. Not jamming, not disrupting, but filling the electronic space with signal, with presence, with the unavoidable confirmation that the frigate's every electronic emission is being cataloged and analyzed and fed in real time to fire control systems whose trigger authority has been active since the campaign began. At 4:59 a.m., the lead southwestern frigate activates its fire control radar to full power. It is now actively illuminating the destroyer ahead of the carrier. The destroyer's AN/SLQ-32 classifies the radar mode. This is a targeting solution radar. This is the last electronic step before a weapons employment decision. The destroyer's commanding officer authorizes SM-2 engagement preparation at 4:59:14 a.m. The VLS cells forward of the bridge are hot. The fire control solution is running. The launcher is ready. The round is not yet fired. The trigger is held at the precise threshold between preparation and action, at the point where one more input, one more radar mode change, one more bearing shift, one more indicator that the Iranian ship intends to shoot rather than bluff, will remove the threshold entirely. 19 seconds pass. They are the longest 19 seconds in the strait tonight. At 4:59:33 a.m., the maneuvering Iranian frigate, the hull driving toward the choke point at 23 knots, reduces speed. The deceleration is abrupt. The bow wave collapses. The thermal signature of the propulsion plant shifts as the engine output drops. The ship is not stopping, but it is no longer accelerating. The destroyer's intercept geometry, updated in real time, shows that the American ship will reach the choke point first by a margin of 4 minutes and 20 seconds. At 5 a.m., the lead southwestern frigate deactivates its fire control radar. The mode shift registers on the destroyer's EW system. The TAO notes it. She does not immediately update the threat assessment. One radar going quiet in an active formation is not a de-escalation. It is a change in posture whose meaning requires confirmation. The confirmation arrives at 5:02 a.m. when the northeastern frigate element alters course. The three ships that had been arcing to position themselves north of the carrier's track begin a turn to starboard, away from the transit lane toward the Iranian coastline. The turn is gradual and it is real, and the bearing rate on the SPY-1D confirms it is not a feint. They are withdrawing, not quickly, not with any gesture that concedes defeat. They are simply no longer on an intercept course. The geometry of blockade that had been assembling for 29 minutes has begun to unmake itself. The maneuvering frigate in the choke point reaches its planned blocking position at 5:04 a.m. The American destroyer is already there. The two ships are 1,100 meters apart, the destroyer holding its position in the deep draft channel, the Iranian frigate sitting in water that is technically navigable, but is not the deepest water, not the track the carrier needs. The frigate holds this position for 6 minutes and 40 seconds. The Seahawk's infrared camera watches the Iranian bridge crew through the cockpit display. The laser designator is on them the entire time. At 5:10:41 a.m., the maneuvering frigate turns north. It moves at 8 knots back toward the Iranian coast. The deep draft channel in the Strait of Hormuz is open. At 5:14 a.m., the USS Abraham Lincoln enters the strait. The carrier moves through the choke point at 5:31 a.m. The Iranian frigates are visible on radar at ranges between 14 and 19 nautical miles, present, still, watching, but no longer in the channel. The destroyer that held the passage stands to the carrier's port side as the carrier clears the narrowest point, the two American ships moving through together in a formation whose spacing and bearing are not accidental. They are measured. They are a statement in the grammar of ships that has been spoken in this strait for 50 years. The Seahawk maintains altitude over the formation until 5:44 a.m. By then, the carrier's through. The crew of the Seahawk has been airborne for 4 hours and 51 minutes. The lead pilot makes no comment on the transit in his flight log beyond the coordinates and time in a contact report that will become part of a larger operational record. The record will note that the strait was contested. It will note that the transit was completed. It will not fully capture what it felt like to be in that aircraft at 800 feet above the choke point, watching a laser dot hold perfectly still on an Iranian warship's deck plating while two ships drove toward each other, and the margin between confrontation and catastrophe was measured in seconds, and the outcome of each second was not predetermined. The fire control radar on the southwestern frigate activated for 19 seconds. In those 19 seconds, the most consequential decision of the night was made by no one, by the simple passing of time, by the fact that the Iranian captain looked at the destroyer in the deep draft channel and calculated that the cost of the next step was higher than the cost of the step before it. That calculation is not recorded anywhere. It lived entirely inside one man's head in a warship in a strait in the dark. The world does not know it happened. The world drives its cars and heats its homes and does not know that 19 seconds in the Strait of Hormuz contained the mechanism of a catastrophe that did not occur. The strike group enters the Persian Gulf at 5:52 a.m. The Persian Gulf is 180,000 square miles of water, and it is, by the time the carrier's island clears the last navigational buoy of the strait, the most heavily defended body of water in the world. 6 Iranian frigates, 44 minutes of geometric pressure, 19 seconds of active fire control radar, 1 deep draft channel. 0 rounds fired. 0 inches yielded. The Strait of Hormuz is not simply a waterway. It is a test administered every time a warship transits it under pressure, a question asked in the language of hulls and radar, and the silence of radios that no one answers. Tonight, the answer given by the men and women of the strike group was the only answer that preserves the freedom of the seas. They moved forward, they did not stop, and they made the corridor open by being unwilling to accept that it was closed. The deep water holds what passed through it tonight. The record does.